Good to see you, Joe.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Josh. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. I've just been having these wandering conversations with different people in the hotel business and trying to figure out what all goes into building and running a successful hotel. Glad to get to chat with you because I haven't spent much time with anyone in the design and architecture space. And I think that's like such a critical piece of what's part of hospitality and maybe one of the unspoken or unseen things, right? It's something that matters so much, but that people maybe don't actually think about right offhand when they're enjoying a nice hotel.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think when you look at just the landscape of different brands too, and my first memories of staying at a hotel always went
Yeah.
back to something fun, something exciting. You
Mhm.
were on a family vacation, or maybe you were with like your youth sports team that was at a tournament. It was all of these great, really exciting things. And I think that's when I first started working at DLR Group, what really attracted me to come over to our hospitality studio was just
Mhm.
those stories, and I think the one thing
Yeah.
at DLR Group that we really pride ourselves on is the storytelling and the themes and the muses that go in and around designing a lot of the properties that we do. So it's really been
Yeah.
fun from that end. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more. What does that mean about a muse? Can you give me an example?
It's essentially you're trying to design for a particular guest. So
Mhm.
if you were to take a lifestyle hotel, so to speak, an autograph, a curio, an independent property,
Mm.
we as designers put ourselves in a position or the shoes, so to speak, of what that target guest may look and feel like. What's
Yeah.
their age demographic? Where are they trying to explore within the city that we're designing? It's
Mhm.
kind of a fictitious character that you're
Yep.
trying to base your design in and around, which I know a lot of times is where we start in terms of our design process
Mhm.
is really trying to ingrain ourselves in the community where we are designing and doing everything. It's pretty cool, Josh. We had an opportunity on a project that I was involved with a Perium Hotel Group who's based here in Chicago, where
Okay.
I sit. They're an independent hotelier. They've got some amazing properties sprinkled
Mhm.
across the Midwest. We were repositioning a historic bank building actually, and the hotel's called the Surety Hotel in downtown Des Moines. But once we were awarded the project, our design team went to Des Moines. We talked to all sorts of different people. We researched, went to libraries, and just tried to find candidly things that really aren't on the internet. I think that's
Yeah.
where a lot of our storytelling and research comes from. So yeah, to answer your
Mhm.
question, that muse is just really the
Mhm.
person or the people that you're trying to design for.
Do you come up with a name, like a person's name, or sometimes is it like a historical figure or something like that?
Yeah, so a lot of times, especially on the soft branded independent properties, we
Mhm.
work with a branding company, so not necessarily part of DLR Group, but
Mhm.
a group of people that really have an expertise in trying to come up with what the story is behind the particular property, or really some design pillars that an architect and an interior designer can start to mold the framework of
Yeah.
what the concept of the hotel is going to be
Yeah.
around, which they're incredibly talented firms and they're a lot of fun to work with.
That's fascinating. I've always heard, and I try to do this when I'm like writing something or telling a story, is picture a specific person
Mhm.
instead of thinking about the broad, like the general population, right? So if you're giving a talk, don't think about the like 200 people that are in the room. Pick one person that's in the room and write it and speak as if you're speaking to them. And then that ends up actually being much more relevant to the whole room than if you try to appeal to everyone.
We're designing an autograph collection in Ann Arbor, actually on
Mhm.
University of Michigan's campus, and the Muse or the branding group came up with one of the former presidents, I think back from like the 1920s, actually, that was a world traveler. So the hotel is called the Vanguard, and there's all of these touches of different places that this former president happened to go to,
Yeah.
everything from a French inspired brasserie to
Mhm.
different touches in the guest room. But again, I think that it's really trying to instill just some fun, energetic sexiness,
Yeah.
so to speak,
Yeah.
to keep people coming back. So
Yeah.
the branding is absolutely fantastic. And
Mhm.
again, it's the one of the pillars in terms of finding out where your design is going to take you.
Yeah. So, do you have specific pillars when you all think about design? And looking at what you do at DLR Group, I saw a lot of focus on like true craftsmanship, artisan design, accessibility, and equity. I would love to hear from your perspective when we think about designing a hotel. These are our pillars that make an effective design.
Yeah. So Brian Murch, who's our head of architectural design in our hospitality studio, he always coins the phrase, we design from the inside out. And
Mm,
everyone loves like that sexy bar, the lobby, the guest rooms. And I
yeah.
think a lot of times we really are inspired by what's on the inside of the property.
Yeah.
And it's really important when we're doing that, trying to really tie in the exterior and blending in what's going on the inside and then
Mhm.
along with the outside as well. So there's a lot of crossover between the two. I think a lot of times we're trying to take outdoor spaces and connect them to interior spaces as well. As rooftops have been incredible revenue generating spaces over the last handful of years. We've seen a lot of ownership groups try to take those into account. But
Yeah.
again, I really think that Brian and our team does a nice job of, again, trying to design inside out.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. From an outsider, I've spent some time thinking about design just because we, as a family, my wife and I love it. We've got a 1920s Tudor house and we're like trying
Oh,
to just rebuild it over time, but honor the building itself and like where it is. Okay. It's part of this neighborhood. What does that mean? And so some of it's okay, this isn't just our house. This is we're like a caretaker. And I noticed, for instance, we spent less money on renovating our kitchen and I resurfaced the fronts of the cabinets, but I spent money on brass pulls that were brass. Like they're really they have a lot of weight to them. Or like we bought, these light fixtures that like I wouldn't have spent the money on, but my wife was happy to do. That are unlacquered brass and like how you feel the click when you switch it and the knob
yeah.
the knob is like feels like an old guitar amp, like it's like
Yes.
it's got a feel to it. There's these little things that we notice like that matter. It's like creating this sense of place, and you don't have to try to do everything fancy because then they actually stick out.
It's interesting you bring that up. I'm sure there's a ton of character to your point at a 1920s home. We've done a lot of historic tax credit, historic renovation deals in the
Mhm.
past. Those are almost easier to design in and around because that character, like that essence, Josh,
Mhm.
it's there. Whereas when
Yeah.
you're trying to build something brand new, you really have to search deeper. You have to do more
Yeah.
research. You're trying to
Mm.
build that, tell that
Mhm.
story at the
Yeah.
same time. But again, you go into a 1930s bank building, there's a lot of character, there's a lot of history there. Whereas
Mhm.
when you're doing, again, a new build, those bones don't exist, so you're
Yeah.
having to create them, which is
Yeah.
far harder, so
Right, building something from scratch that has soul, like, that has, like,
yeah,
this substance to it. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that the best hoteliers really try to find a way to really to bring in the locals, I think, as
Mhm.
opposed to being
Yeah.
focused kind of back to our discussion on muses, is
Mm.
they're trying to attract the locals once it's the kind of the cool place to hang out in Austin or Detroit, whatever it may be. Those people post things on Instagram and social media, and the
Yeah.
buzz kind of starts to get out, and before you know it, you've got travelers that are coming in that
Mm.
wanna stay there, they wanna hang out where the locals do
Right.
and be infused in the community from that end.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, I know as I travel, I wanna experience the city that the people that live there experience? And it also just honors the people that live there. You're becoming part of their culture, and so how do I do something that will help elevate the community that's already here, instead of just thinking about, "Oh, how do I build a hotel that makes money?" You end up making more money, but you've
Yeah.
you've put the work in to really honor everyone in the process.
Yeah, and the people that were there from the past too, and
Yeah.
that's the cool things in
Mhm.
this hotel that we did for Aperium, the Surety Hotel. There's this wild raccoon that's, like, in
Okay.
the bar when you're right when you walk into the bar and everyone's, "What's the story with this raccoon?" When we were doing our research and when we
When
were
you say wild
charretting,
raccoon, are you saying like a taxidermied
yeah,
raccoon?
it's not live anymore.
Right, but I mean, it's
Right,
not
right.
just a picture. There's
Yeah,
a real.
there's
Okay, all right,
yeah.
cool.
So we learned that this woman that lived down the street had actually a pet raccoon,
Okay,
that she would walk down Main Street where this hotel exists, and there was some connection that she had with this bank. So we found it actually in a library, one of the branding groups
wow,
did. And so we ended up getting a raccoon taxidermied, and we had it
wow.
bedazzled and whatnot. And it's just a cool little piece.
Yeah, that's
It sits there
amazing.
in the hotel bar and whatnot. But
Yeah,
again, back to your point, I mean, I think it's how can you connect what's happened in the past and
yeah,
just interesting things from the community that you can tie and thread into your property.
yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we like back up a little bit, you said as a kid you remember the experiences you had at hotels. One thing I'm curious about, because I think everyone kind of defines it differently, is just like what's hospitality for you? What does the word hospitality mean to you?
Yeah. I think just again, going back to the family vacation and
Hmm.
hospitality to me, I think just encompasses people being there to support and help you.
Like you think about the word hospital, hospitality, all of that is like the same kind of root of being taken care of. What's your earliest memory of feeling supported and taken care of?
One of the things that sticks out to me was we used to always get together for Christmas vacation, and
Hmm.
I had a boatload of cousins, aunts, and uncles. We get together in Minneapolis. The one thing that will always stick out to me is the smell of chlorine as you're getting closer and closer to the pool.
Yeah.
I think the
Hmm.
old school
Yeah.
Holiday Inns.
Similar, going into my first embassy suites as a kid and seeing that the big indoor atrium,
Yes.
and but you could also smell the pool when you step in there.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
had the mile-long buffet, breakfast buffet in the morning. You just cruise through.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, there is something like really special about the stuff that sticks out, right? Like you have your regular life and your regular patterns, and like when you step into a hotel, like it is this opportunity to cause a pattern interruption for someone, right? A disruption like having a taxidermied raccoon. There's
Yeah.
it's an important part of creating a memory is creating a pattern disruption, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. We designed a autograph collection hotel up in Fort Collins for Sage Hospitality. It's called the Elizabeth, and it's all based in and around music. The donor was very prideful in music conferences, music conventions, music concerts, music fests, and wanted really to create a property that was based in and around music. And one of the amenity spaces that we came up with was a lending library. Wild, but you're able to go down to this small room and you can check out records
mm,
and different things from that end. But the other cool part, Josh, is that you can actually loan guitars. You could take
wow.
a guitar back up to your room. All the rooms had these like
Yeah.
little Marshall amps and whatnot.
Ah,
Yeah, I think there's
is there like record players in the rooms as well?
yeah, so every
Oh,
room's got a
that's
record
great.
player
Mm,
and whatnot. But again, I mean, I think it's just about
yeah,
creating some of those different
that's
memories, so to
great.
speak, from your end that you can
Mhm.
incorporate into things from that.
The
We were
thing
just glad that no one put drums in those lending libraries.
I was staying in, don't tell anyone that listens to this podcast, an Airbnb recently, and
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
but like it was in Austin, like on Zilker Park, and they like they play drum circles like out at the park, right outside of this house, basically.
Okay.
And so I thought this was awesome. The way that the host like handles it is they put drums in the closet for you so that you can join the drum circle.
Oh, no
They
way.
put sound machines in all the rooms, also like white noise machines to help or whatever. But instead of building this as this is something that's going to try to counteract the noise, instead, like, how can we actually just embrace it?
Bring it
Like,
in. Yeah.
here's 5 drums in your closet that you can have your own drum circle or go join the one outside, which
Yeah.
I really
So
like.
did you join?
I danced in the drum circle, but my
There you
kids were
go.
embarrassed. But we had our own at the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's fun. That's
Yeah.
fun. It's
Mhm.
interesting on the Airbnb space too. It's wild how
Mhm.
we've really seen extended stays morph and change over the
Yeah.
last handful of years,
Yep.
especially since COVID, right?
Mhm.
The extended stay program is really changed in a big way, which is cool. We did a hotel in Denver. We're doing another one in Colorado Springs, actually for Sage Hospitality as well, but it's called the Catbird.
Mhm.
And it's these really cool, like high platform beds. They're up probably 4 feet,
Yeah.
very compact and whatnot. But it's interesting how much we've seen extended stay kind of change over the last handful of years.
Yeah, what have you seen there?
It's just the amenities that they're providing for these people that may be on the road.
Yep.
I was actually there just a couple weeks ago. I think they said that they've had a guest been there for, I think, almost 5 or 6 months.
How did they
So,
design things differently to get somebody to wanna stay that long?
yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just the small touches, like,
Yeah.
that hotel has some small kind of co-working spaces. I know the
Mm.
Huxton here in Chicago has co-working spaces as well.
Mhm.
The Catbird has a rent a plant program, which is
Oh,
cool.
nice.
You can
Uh-huh.
go down to the lobby and there's, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 different plants that you're able to bring back up to your room, and there's a
Cool.
little tag that tells you how much light it needs per day and how much
Mhm.
water it needs per day. But we've really seen, I think, a lot of
Yeah.
guests just wanna take more of that approach, but still be in a hotel.
Yeah. Like, you see Airbnb going at this directly right now, with their advertising of if you're going with your kids, like, you don't wanna stay in a hotel because, like, you're gonna go to bed at 7 p.m. when you put your kid in bed. Like, all the lights have to go off or whatever. But now also, like, what you're saying, right? That's not true anymore. There's a lot of opportunities to create and design based on evolving needs. And I would say that's probably been one of the biggest opportunities from design standpoint for hotels is when you need multiple rooms and you need sleeping areas for a group of people that are together to keep them from just being like separate units.
Yeah, and we're starting to see some hoteliers and some hotel brands
Mhm.
get into the bunk bed
Yeah.
situation. Talk about like Moxie and Motto and whatnot
Yeah.
that maybe
Right.
have more
Hmm.
micro brands,
Yeah.
so to speak, but are trying to just house a few more people than maybe a traditional
Mhm.
hotel room would. But I always think back to like spring break in college when you had 6 guys in a, Daytona
Yeah.
Beach
Yeah.
courtyard, just everyone packed
Uh-huh.
in and whatnot, but
Mhm.
that's, again, something that the hotel
Mhm.
brands are really trying to
Yeah.
do.
I love with Motto, the connecting rooms of you could get, 3 rooms and have one middle as a suite. When we stay at the Anatole, we can get a couple of, like, corner rooms here in Dallas that then all 3 rooms can connect so that it does feel like you don't have to go stay somewhere else. There's trade-offs on both sides, right? Like, you get a lot of
Yeah.
inconsistency with Airbnbs and like staying in someone's house, but you get this togetherness, but you don't get the bed you probably want.
Or just fresh
Uh-huh.
sheets at
Yeah.
times, or I mean, something
Right.
like
Totally.
that, I think people are
Mm.
a little bit
Yeah.
hesitant of, and
Right.
again, I mean, we go back to those travelers that want to
Mhm.
experience a local
Yeah.
vibe,
Yeah.
local restaurants and whatnot, and not to say that you can't do that if you are staying at an
Mhm.
Airbnb, but I
Yeah.
think from a hotel perspective, you're probably a little more apt to go check out
Yep.
the cool restaurant down the street or
Yeah.
whatever it may be.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah.
So shifting gears here, could you explain to me if I were wanting to build a new hotel, why would I reach out to a firm like DLR Group? What's the need and how do you all assist in that process?
Yeah, the nice part about DLR Group is we've got 30 offices from coast to coast, so we're in a lot of
Mhm.
different markets. Our hotel studios, Josh, really sit in 3 or 4 of those markets,
Yeah.
so we've got probably 55 architects and I'd say 30, 35 interior designers that
Mhm.
just work on hospitality projects, which are typically only hotels.
Yep.
And what that does is it gives us a lot of insight in terms of how different municipalities run, how
Mhm.
entitlements work, how permitting works. So
Yeah.
you may have we've got a big design team here in Chicago from an architectural interior design perspective, but the project may be in, I'm just making this up, Austin. And we've got a local office there in Austin. So we'll interject a couple people from our Austin office that can help with the city process, entitlements, permitting, code. They know the local contractors. They understand how the city process will work. That just allows our clients to really get that expertise of a national hotel studio, and then
Yeah.
also understand what's going on locally too. So
Mhm.
I think that's why a lot of our bigger national clients really like working with
Yeah.
us. I know you've had some guys
Mhm.
on the podcast before from like White
Mhm.
Lodging, Witness
Mhm.
Group. We've done
Mhm.
some work with them. So
Mhm.
people that travel across the country, I think that they really see value in the way that our model is set up.
Yeah, maybe can you simplify it more for me? So let's say that I find a lot like that is in a spot that I want to build a hotel, and like I've got financing secured, but I do want like
Good job.
I do
Yeah.
want to engage someone to help me build the thing. I would need a group like yours that's doing the interior design and architecture. Then you would also help me with the branding side.
Yep, the branding side, I
Mhm.
mean, you'd need a team of engineers, so structural
Okay.
engineers,
And
mechanical,
they're like,
electrical.
those engineers are reviewing like what your firm designs?
I mean, it's
How does
really a
that
partner.
process work? Okay.
Yeah, it's a partnership, and a lot of it would be driven from your side too to give
Okay.
us what's called a program, Josh, which really outlines the
Mm.
number of keys, what
Okay.
kind of food and beverage you want implemented in,
Mhm.
how
Mhm.
tall you wanna go. I mean, you
Okay.
listened to Gertej, who was on a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago talking about just construction costs and navigating city processes.
Mm.
You'd like to stay away from what's called high-rise code.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
there's
Because it's
certain
like structurally, it's a lot more time and cost, I would assume.
Yeah, time and cost. There's also certain Marriott calls them module 14, but it's basically fire life safety, which is pretty pretty important.
Yeah.
Um, so some of those things have
Mhm.
added cost to them. So the
Yeah.
taller up you go,
Right.
they impact your budget
Mhm.
far more. So
Mhm. Got
I,
it.
I think that's what our team really does a nice job of, is just understanding what those
Mm.
variances may be. The
Okay.
other thing too is your key count on a typical floor is also
Mhm.
incredibly important, right?
Okay.
And just how are you maneuvering those room bays to be as efficient as you
Mhm.
can? And we'll look at a test fit from firm A and see if we can possibly get a few more keys into a given building envelope just to make it a little bit more efficient. And I mean, if you have a 20-story building with 14 or 15 typical floors with rooms on them and you can squeeze in another room or two, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
big revenue generator
Yeah.
for someone that's on your side. So
Right.
we really try to take pride in that. But step one is doing what we call a test fit. So it's
Mhm.
understanding really the kind of the parcel that you purchased, what the program would be, how
Can I
amenity spaces fit
Uh-huh.
in.
How
Yeah.
would I come up with a program? You've said like some of the folks that you get to work with are first-time hotel owners. How do they
Hmm.
get to that point where they're like, "Here's the program. Here's what I would like
Yeah.
to do," and the plan in general. Is that something they come up with, or they get help with that? How does that process work?
The brand dictates a lot of what the program would be. If you're going to do a
Mhm.
pure prototypical 140 key Courtyard Marriott on a greenfield site outside of Topeka, it's
Mhm.
pretty cut and
Okay.
dry. But now
Mhm.
if you're gonna do an urban project, an Autograph, a Curio, a
Yeah.
Tom's, your program is gonna change a little bit.
Mhm.
It's gonna adapt more to an urban site. It's gonna consider what your amenity spaces are like, how many weddings do you have per year, the
Mhm.
number of rooms you have. If you have 400 rooms, you're going to need a bigger fitness center than if you had 150
Yeah.
rooms. So
Yeah.
the key count drives a lot of things,
Mm.
which I think is important, that you've got your design team that's part of the process, obviously your brand and your flag that are part of
Mhm.
the process, and then the management, the operational
Yeah.
team too. They've got a heavy say just in
Mhm.
terms of how they want things positioned, how they want things oriented from an efficiency perspective.
And it sounds like also just from some of the examples you give, if you're a first time owner, it makes sense to work with a brand in those scenarios because they've got a proven model that you've got less risk involved. But if you're somebody that's been around for a while and you've done the whole process in terms of development and design, then you can start getting out there and building your own kind of thing, maybe without the backing of a brand. Would you agree with?
Yeah, I mean, that's very fair to say. And I
Mm.
think even a lot of our first time hoteliers, they come from some sort of a real estate background. We've seen some come from office to hospitality, but the majority of them, Josh, are candidly probably from a multifamily residential
Yeah, okay.
background that are
Right.
coming in.
They
I
already
mean,
understand development.
yeah, they get
Mhm.
it for the most part. And just the efficiencies
Mhm.
of having some sort of stacked tower, stacked,
Yeah.
units on top of each other. I think that's probably another thing that they have a good grasp of. We've seen a lot of branded residences that have come in and been part of different hotels just to diversify things from a capital stack.
Yeah.
I think that's something, not being an expert on it, but it sounds like a lot of lenders are interested in, or
Mm.
maybe have less heartburn in supporting those projects, so to speak, where they are diversified a little bit.
Meaning that there's residential and hotel in the same building.
Yeah, it's a good gig. The JW Marriott down in Orlando, which we took through entitlements, we were the design architect on it, had conference convention space, food and beverage on the first floor. Then there was a stack of hotel rooms. I think it was probably 14 or 15 floors. And then there were 90 or 100 condos on top of it. And you're able to take advantage of all the amenities that you've got in that hotel, and then
Yeah.
also the service. So if you're a
Mhm.
single guy that doesn't like to make his bed or clean his
Yeah.
room, whatever,
Yeah.
able to take advantages of
Mhm.
those as well.
Those residences were like part of the JW then?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if
Yeah.
you've been to the Alice conference, I think there's
Mhm.
residences on the Ritz-Carlton
Yep.
side too.
Yep. Okay, I'd love to hear just like on career path, like for you. You've been at DLR Group for what, 10 years, is that right?
Yeah, almost
And
11,
wow, okay. And
you know.
before that, you were a baseball coach and a baseball player, is that right?
Yeah, not so much a player. I
Okay.
played in college, but
Oh,
then I
okay.
had a passion for coaching and
Mhm.
whatnot. So I was at Creighton and Sam Houston State for a couple years apiece,
Wow, okay.
and then went to over to the Yankees down in Tampa. I was in player development,
Mm,
and as you can imagine, you don't make a ton of money in minor league baseball. I always go
sure.
back to the movie Bull Durham. If you've ever seen it, you're on a bus most of the time,
Right.
staying in a hotel room with 3, 4
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
but had to get a job during the off season. So my parents
Mm.
had moved to Chicago. My brother had already lived here, and I was working for a fixed seating manufacturer, and ended up getting out of baseball. I took a full-time sales job with this seating company and started doing just presentations to different architecture and interior design firms, hoping that
Mm.
they would spec our product. And one day I got out of one and I said, gosh, it'd be far more fun to sell the actual building design than it
Yeah.
would the furniture that goes into it. And one thing led to another. I came to the understanding that there's this position called business development that a couple of these firms have. I knew someone that knew someone here at DLR Group, and they took a chance on me. And the first project that I actually sold was to White Lodging. They were renovating a little Hyatt place here in River North, which is
Okay.
a neighborhood just north of downtown in Chicago. And that was my first forte, at least into a hospitality sales
Mm.
project. And
Mhm.
from there, it's spurred. I think again, listening to you and Cortez talk a couple weeks ago was just about having just like a hunger and just a real passion for trying to help be part of something and
Yeah.
grow something. And I think when you look at the DLR Group Hospitality Studio, when I started, we were pretty small. We were like a 7, $8 million sector, and we were working on a lot of different select service projects sprinkled throughout the country. And we had a great group of designers and project managers, client leaders that were really hungry to get out there, and they really bought into hospitality. And I think just the sexiness of it was just something that they were really drawn to, and that I was drawn to as well. And 10 years later, we've probably grown 4 or 5 times in size,
Mhm.
and we're working on bigger and sexier projects sprinkled throughout the country. So it's been a lot of fun. I can't say enough good things about the firm and just hospitality in total. I think some of the markets that we get to travel to, Josh, have been a fantastic way to see the country and beyond. We're doing some work in Saudi Arabia right now, for
Wow.
there's a crazy project over there called, it's the Cube, but it's the Mukaab is the name of the project. And if you've seen the Sphere in Las
Mhm.
Vegas, picture that like times 40 or 50.
Yeah.
It's just this massive like silhouette of a
Mm.
cube that
Mhm.
will have different illustration and things on the outside, and then on the interior there's 4 or 5 different hotels. There's
Wow.
entertainment. It's wild how much this job and hospitality in total have allowed a lot of us to travel around and see really cool parts of the country.
Yeah. What does your day-to-day look like? What do you spend your time doing in your role?
A lot of it is prospecting, and it's following,
Mhm.
candidly, Josh, a lot of people that are trying to become hotel developers or that
Yeah.
are current hotel developers, maybe that we're not working with.
Mm.
I think one thing that we've really done a nice job of here is that we've had a two-pronged approach in terms of our clientele, where we're focused largely on owners, on operators that are physically developing or managing these properties.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is building relationships with the brands.
Yeah.
And the brands are really set up from a
Mhm.
two-pronged program as well, where they have franchise development people that are out selling to owners, operators, trying to get them to build or renovate, reposition their brands. And then they have the design team as well, which are big advocates for us and very important in terms of our clientele. People that are making sure that we're upholding what that particular brand's guest promises, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to help facilitate a lot of those relationships.
Mm.
I've got a woman in New York City. Her name is Missy Goldstein. She's fantastic. She's part of our business development team. And then another gentleman, Jake Menard, that's down in Kansas City. So
Yeah.
the 3 of us really work hand in
Oh,
hand
wow.
with our
Okay.
with all of our designers,
Mhm.
and yeah, just try to get out there and
Mhm.
open up new doors.
Yeah, and it's an interesting world now, like in terms of business development, right? Nobody reads a cold email. Nobody wants a phone call, right? It's so much about the trust that you've got and the relationships you've built. And I can see like what you're saying, right? You build a partnership with the brand and you make life easier for them. You align with what matters to them. And if you do that while also taking great care of the owner and the developer, we've seen that with our business. It's just like naturally growing as you figure those things out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, to your point, the cold calling and the cold emailing of days of the world have just
Mhm.
gotten harder and harder. And I think especially now with just social media and obviously the
Yeah.
internet, and word of mouth seems to travel faster since we're doing more and more, I think.
Mhm.
But it's been just really interesting. And I think it's been candidly difficult from a sales perspective to find ways to open those doors, which is just such a big credit to our design team and our project managers, our client leaders that take care of these people so that
Yeah.
they come back. And lucky enough, I'm in a good
Yeah.
spot because we've got a
Yeah.
talented crew. So
That's great.
and
Yeah. That's totally right. I love that. And I actually, I guess that was a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago. I hired the head baseball coach at University of Dallas and
well, no way.
hired him to work at Hilton. And same thing. One of the best hires I've ever made. Just somebody that like gets people, genuinely cares about them, and also knows how to drive performance. I feel like that's a gap in today's world of management and development of team members is holding people to high expectations, not in a way that's micromanaging them and pushing something down on them, but in helping them get the best out of themselves, which I love seeing with sports and baseball, and like coaches can do is, no, I know you can do better.
Yeah.
Getting the best out of somebody. So I love seeing coaches in this space.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. I mean, it's a delicate
Yeah.
balance, like you said, and the micromanagement, especially in the sales world, is just it's awful. I can't imagine being in that kind of a position where you feel like someone's breathing down your neck or
Mm,
looking over your shoulder on
sure.
every phone call that you make. So I try not to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's like a resilience I'm sure that you got from that world, right? You wouldn't be where you are without having the challenges and the tough stuff that you had to go through like in that environment, like riding the bus and staying in the hotels, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of hardship that comes with that I think helps us see what we're made of.
Yeah, I mean, baseball is a game of failure too, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Mhm.
the other side of it,
Right.
but Yeah, I
Right.
mean, I think sports in total teach you that. I mean,
Mhm.
teamwork, whether you're part of a choir and you have to hold up your end of the bargain in terms of understanding the
Yeah.
notes or whatever it may
Yeah.
be, but I think
Mhm.
teamwork in total is
Mhm.
important from that end.
Mhm.
So definitely,
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah. I always like to when I'm interviewing somebody, I'm like, "Tell me about, like, the worst job you've ever had." Like, I wanna know about something that was really.
Not bad.
Yeah.
My first job was hauling rose bushes from a nursery in Minnesota. And
Okay.
I think, I don't even know that I had gloves on that day or like a
Yeah.
short sleeve shirt, so I got pretty banged up from that end, but
There you go. I
yeah,
love
I
that.
don't know that I'd go back and do that in
Yeah.
total again.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for being here. This was really like I really
Yeah.
enjoyed our conversation and I'd love to have you back. There's so much to dig into. Like I've got a lot more I'd love to talk to you about soon. So
Yeah,
thanks
no,
for
thanks so much for having me, Josh. It's
yeah.
an honor. I
y-
really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Joe.
Alright,
All right.
take care.
Talk to you
See ya.
soon. Bye.